Hello friends, and welcome to Glunk's Half Hour. I'm Muntari Glunk, and today I want to share with you a selection of weird and wonderful stories from the world of Mr Plasterknots. I have invited two of my friends round for company. Say hello to Auntie and Archie. Auntie and Archie will be starring our first story titled Auntie Gobblebottom and the Bubble Bars. Oh, hang on. Auntie has something to tell me. Auntie says she already knows what happens. Well, of course you do, Auntie. But her friends don't know. Oh, hang on. Archie has something to tell me. Archie says he would love to listen to the story again because he finds it quite amusing. Okay then, here is Auntie Gobblebottom and the Bubble Bars, narrated by the magical voice of McGaughey.
Mr Plasterknots presents Auntie Gobblebottom and the Bubble Bars. Story by Muntari Glunk. Narrated by McGaughey. As Auntie Gobblebottom grew up, all she ever dreamt about was bubbles. Bubbles this and bubbles that. She would go on and on and on and on. "See, the thing about bubbles," Auntie would say, "is that they float around without a care in the world." The world, according to Auntie, should be a world full of bubbles, for a world without bubbles was pointless. But not everyone thought like Auntie. The kids used to call her Auntie Bubblebottom. "Bubble, bubble, bottom and grabble. If Auntie catches you, you're in trouble." There came a time when Auntie locked herself away in her house with her bubble dreams forever. "Goodbye, world," she said. One day, Auntie's nephew, Archie Gobblebottom, came to visit her. As Archie entered her house, there in front of him stood a huge machine. "I call it the Bubble-tastic Maker," said Auntie. "The bubble what?" asked Archie. The Bubble-tastic Maker was a machine that Auntie had made out of old junk, and it was producing hundreds and hundreds of bubble bars, announced an excited Auntie. "They are the creamiest, tastiest bubbles in the whole world." The only problem was, Auntie's bubble bars were so tasty, she would eat them for breakfast, lunch, tea, dinner, and even supper. Thought Archie. It can't be good for Auntie to keep eating all those bubble bars. And that's when he had a brainwave. He decided to take all of Auntie's bubble bars and make one huge bubble bar cake. As Archie slowly stirred the enormous pot with an oversized spoon, he sang, "Fiddlesticks, crumbs and golly, whatever it is that on the trolley, my belly is starting to rumble, any louder than this place will crumble." When the bubble bar cake was ready, Archie presented his masterpiece to Auntie. Ta-da! Archie thought that if Auntie ate the entire cake, she would become horribly sick and wouldn't want to eat another bubble bar ever again. So he started cramming the bubble bar cake into Auntie's mouth. Everything seemed to be going to plan until suddenly Auntie began to balloon into one humongous bubble. She grew and grew and grew and grew until her arms and legs stuck out of the sides and front of her house, and her head popped out through the roof. Well, because of Archie's brainwave, Auntie became famous everywhere as the biggest bubble lady that ever lived. And everyone wanted to know how she had got so huge. "Well," she said, "I invented a machine that makes bubble bars, and thanks to my nephew Art..." But before Auntie could finish her sentence, Archie stuck a pin into her bottom. Almost at once, Auntie's head disappeared back through the roof. It was followed by her arms and legs, which shrank quickly into the house. Then she whizzed around inside like a rocket, growing smaller and smaller. Auntie sounded like a fart muncher. Went her bottom. In fact, Auntie let out so much air that she shriveled up like a wrinkled old raisin. And after that, she became even more famous. Now everyone called her the smallest, wrinkled old raisin lady that ever lived. It was then that Archie happened to notice a bubble bar bright with colour. This bubble bar had a message on it. "Great things come in small packages." Signed, Mr. Mooncakes. From that day on, Auntie never ate another bubble bar ever again. Instead, she sold her bubble bars all over the world, and she became the first wrinkled old raisin astronaut lady that ever went into space. Auntie was even made an AOB, an authority on bubbles. And what of the world according to Auntie? Well, it just so happened that the whole world did indeed become a world full of bubbles. A world full of bubble bars. And it was all thanks to Archie. The end.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that story as much as we did. Now, how about we listen to The Boy with the World's Tallest Hair? Auntie says she's hungry. Archie says, how about a bubble bar?
Mr. Plasterknots presents The Boy with the World's Tallest Hair. Story by Muntari Glunk. Narrated by McGaughey. Cuthbert Cringeworthy was never happy with his hair. He couldn't understand why it was always so short. No matter what he did with it, it just wouldn't grow. "Oh, how I wish I had big hair," sighed Cuthbert. But Cuthbert was in no mood to give up on his wish. So he developed what he called the Wig Blitz formula. When it was ready, Cuthbert fed his formula into a special Blitz can and sprayed a small amount of Blitz liquid onto his short hair. Then he stared into his bedroom mirror. Nothing happened. So he stared some more. Still, nothing happened. In a fit of anger, Cuthbert sprayed the entire formula onto his short hair. Then he stomped off to bed in a sulk. When Cuthbert woke the next morning, he got up, plodded straight towards his bedroom door, and went to walk onto the landing. But he couldn't pass under the door frame. "What's wrong with my head?" Cuthbert said to himself. He plodded back to his mirror to have a look, and "Oh, my Wig Blitz formula, it worked!" shouted Cuthbert. It was then that he noticed a message on a piece of paper that was stuck to the side of his special Blitz can. He was in a hurry, so he quickly unstuck the piece of paper and put it in his pocket to read later. Cuthbert's hair kept growing and growing and growing upwards. In fact, his hair was soon so tall that it reached record-busting proportions. Before long, Cuthbert Cringeworthy became known throughout the whole world as the boy with the world's tallest hair. Cuthbert's hair was so tall that when he went to sleep at night, he had to push it up into a pipe that was fixed above his bed. And when he walked around the house, his hair constantly brushed against the ceilings. One day, when Cuthbert looked in his mirror, he couldn't believe his eyes. Staring back at him were 4 creepily crawly creatures. "Oh, hello, Cuthbert," said the creepily crawly creatures. They were living in Cuthbert's hair. So now everyone began to ask them, "What's it like in there?" And one by one, the creepily crawly creatures would reply. Mr. Waspy Whittleby would say, "Zzz, I find it very spacious. Zzz, I give Cuthbert's hair 5 stars. Mr. Antsy Barnstool would remark, "Oh, yes, newspaper in the morning and fantastic views. Ha, ha, I say." Miss Beezy Fusard would add, "Oh, zzz, I tell you, it's the best hairpiece around." Zzz. Miss Spider Rimgard would declare, "Well, I'm bringing the whole family down here for a holiday." Cuthbert soon had an entire colony of creepily crawly creatures living in his hair. They built skyscrapers, hotels, shops. They even built a spiral railway to travel around on. The creepily crawly creatures were out of control. It was then that Cuthbert remembered the message on his special Blitz can. He quickly pulled the piece of paper out of his trouser pocket. The message read, "Not all wishes are good wishes." Signed, Mr. Mooncakes. "Oh, I wish I had short hair again," sighed Cuthbert. But there is an old saying, what goes up must come down. And in Cuthbert's case, well, suddenly his hair began to bend to one side, and it snapped off. All the creepily-crawly creatures tumbled out, followed by the skyscrapers, the hotels, the shops, and the spiral railway. The creepily-crawly creatures were furious. Cuthbert went from being the boy with the world's tallest hair to the boy with the world's shortest hair. But he didn't care. Now that his hair was short again, that was the way he wished to keep it. The end.
Wow! Well, I don't think Cuthbert will be making any more wishes anytime soon. Shall we listen to another story? This one is called The Rise and Fall of Bartholomew Biscuit Breath.
Mr. Plasterknots presents The Rise and Fall of Bartholomew Biscuit Breath. Story by Muntari Glunk, narrated by Nicholas McGaughey. When Bartholomew Biscuit Breath was a little boy, all he ever thought about was paste. Toothpaste, sandwich paste, wallpaper paste. In fact, any type of paste. Bartholomew was forever pasting things. So, his ambition when growing up was to make paste. But not just any paste. Bartholomew wanted to formulate a very special type of paste. The kind of paste that would amaze the whole world. Then one day, Bartholomew invented the Copple Nopple Formula. "This is the strongest, fastest-drying paste in the entire universe," said Bartholomew. To prove his boast, he added, "I am going to use my paste to build the tallest tower the world has ever seen. And when my tower is finished, I'm going to live in it, right at the very top." Bartholomew's plan was to build the tower himself in 7 days. The whole world thought this was impossible. How could paste hold the world's tallest tower together? And would Bartholomew really be able to build his tower in only 7 days? "I can make the impossible possible," said Bartholomew. And with the help of his mega super paste cannon, Bartholomew made good on his boast. He finished his tower just as he said he would, in 7 days. Everybody was amazed. Tanks, missiles, and wrecking balls tried to knock it down, But Bartholomew's tower stood up to them all. His super paste really was super after all. So, Bartholomew began to sell it across the world until he became the richest boy that ever lived. But having so much money started to make Bartholomew feel very powerful. He was so pleased with himself that his ego soon became the size of his tower. And as he gazed down from the very top, he was filled with a sense of his own greatness. Bartholomew would laugh and sneer at others and tell them how clever and wonderful he was. The boy who'd invented the Koppel-Noppel formula was now a boy that no one recognized. He'd grown into a smug and greedy monster. The whole world could see it. But sadly, Bartholomew was so proud of himself that he could not. One night, Bartholomew had a dream about his tower and a rainstorm. When he woke up, there in front of him was a card with a message on it. Without reading the message properly, Bartholomew popped the card into his pocket. But what of his dream? Well, Bartholomew thought his dream was just that, a dream. Just then, it began to rain, and rain, and rain. Bartholomew stood at the top of his tower and said out loud to himself, "I am the greatest, most powerful boy in the entire world. My super paste will stand up to anything." Bartholomew laughed. And laughed. And laughed. Until suddenly, his so-called super paste began to come unstuck. The rain was turning it into sludge, and before Bartholomew could blink, his tower came crashing down. As Bartholomew fell down with his tower, he remembered the card with a message on it that he had put in his pocket. Quickly, he pulled it out and read, "Remember who you once were. Signed, Mr. Mooncakes." But it was too late. Everyone in the world could see for themselves. This was the rise and fall of Bartholomew Biscuit Breath. The end.
Now, this is an incredibly special occasion. Andy wants to know why it's such an incredibly special occasion. Well, I've decided to read the last story myself. Archie wants to know, what's the story called? Well, the story is called The Boy Who Couldn't Sit Still. When Juxta Crosby was born, the first thing that came out of his little mouth was "Eee!" Dr. Mumbles couldn't believe his ears, and he couldn't believe his eyes either. Chuckster jumped up and down all over the place like a bouncy ball packed with energy. It didn't matter what Chuckster was doing. As he grew bigger, he just couldn't sit still. At school time, he found it hard to sit down during class lessons. But when it came to sports, he was a natural. Chuckster broke all kinds of records. Fizzball, fastest goal ever scored. Moonball, fastest serve ever recorded. Leap test, highest jump ever made. It was no different at bedtime. Even after his dad, Chuckster Crosby Sr., had tucked him in. Chuckster still wriggled and waggled about. "Night, Dad." "Eeeeee," Chuckster would say. As Crosby Sr. watched his son grow up, he wondered if Chuckster would ever sit still. What kind of future would his boy have? One day, Crosby Sr. saw a piece of paper lying on the ground, and he bent down to pick it up. There was a message on it. He read it and quickly put the piece of paper in his pocket. Sometime later, Strauss Krakenball, a scientist with very big ideas, announced that he had invented the world's first energy-driven space rocket. But the whole world wanted to know where Strauss Krakenball was going to find enough energy to make a space rocket fly. "That's easy," said Strauss Krakenball. "I give you Chuckster Crosby." Strauss Krakenball told the world that young Chuckster Crosby was the boy who couldn't sit still. It was young Chuckster who would provide the energy. "And if you don't believe me," he added, "see for yourselves the Crosby effect." Strauss and Chuckster climbed into the rocket. Chuckster then began to jump up and down on a round energizer pad. "Yee!" Chuckster cried as he jumped faster and faster. Suddenly, Strauss's energy-driven space rocket roared into life. The rocket, with Chuckster and Strauss on board, soared up into the air and off into deep space. It sped across the universe, and they were able to travel to every star system. They visited far-off worlds where they met all kinds of weird and wonderful space creatures. And wherever Chuckster was in the universe, he would send a signal back home. "Everything's fine, Dad." Eeeeee! Crosby Sr. missed Chuckster dearly, although he was very proud of him, and every day he would read the message that was on the piece of paper he had found. "Everything that happens is for a reason." Signed, Mr. Mooncakes. The fact that Chuckster had been born as the boy who couldn't sit still was, of course, for a reason. For Chuckster Crosby, as well as for Strauss Krakenball. The two explorers were an inspiration to everyone, and in time, their adventures would become the greatest stories ever told. Well, I think Auntie and Archie enjoyed it. They've fallen asleep. I hope too, friends, you've enjoyed yourselves. Until the next time, stay safe. Now remember, friends, if you want to find out more about the goings-on of the world of Mr. Plasterknots and any up-and-coming new stories, just simply go to www.glunkos.com.